1951 Cold immunity. An entire month has passed since Yuan accepted 40 glacial traces on his body. Although his training progress has sped up tremendously, Yuan could tell that he would still not be able to achieve cold immunity within what little time he had left. Thus, he decided to push himself further and accepted another 10 glacial traces, bringing his total to 50. His recklessness was so mind-boggling that it indirectly disturbed the others' training. There was simply no way they could focus on their own training when there was such a madman in their presence. With only 1 week remaining, Yuan suddenly began making his way toward the massive ice structure at the center of the floor, the very source of the coldest, most concentrated energy in the entire training ground. The others could only watch in silence, occasionally swallowing hard as tension gripped them. Each of them was a golden immortal, one even a true immortal. Yet not a single one dared to approach the ice structure. Its oppressive cold was something even they instinctively feared. And yet, Yuan walked toward it without hesitation.
He's actually approaching the Heaven Frost essence. That thing could instantly freeze an immortal even if they have cold immunity.
There was a reason why everyone was training far away from the Heaven Frost essence. Cold resistance has improved tremendously. Cold resistance has improved tremendously. Cold resistance has improved tremendously. Yuan's cold resistance was improving at a tremendous rate, but his body was also experiencing unspeakable pain. His skin, blood, and even his bones were constantly freezing and shattering with every passing second. A few days later, your skill's supreme cold resistance has developed into cold immunity. A unique aura enveloped Yuan's figure the moment he achieved cold immunity.
He's actually achieved cold immunity.
You have achieved 4 different types of immunity. You have earned the title True Impervious Physique. Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique has activated. Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique has begun fusing with cold immunity. Progress, 1%. As Yuan had anticipated, his Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique began to merge with his cold immunity. However, unlike his time in the Primal Expanse, the training ground here, despite its intensity, was ultimately too weak to yield any significant progress. Yuan turned his gaze toward the towering ice structure in front of him, the thought of taking a few bites out of it briefly crossing his mind as a way to accelerate his progress. But after a moment of consideration, he shook the idea away. This training ground didn't belong to him, nor even to the Holy Dragon clan. Claiming something so central to its design would be crossing a line he wasn't willing to step over. Looks like I will have to visit White Hell to complete its fusion, he sighed inwardly. Since he'd achieved his goals, Yuan decided to end his training there and began walking toward the teleportation device.
Excuse me, are you done with your training?
One of the 4 immortals suddenly called out to Yuan. If he'd finished his training, it wouldn't be against the rules to disturb him. Yuan halted his steps and turned to face the 4 immortals.
Yes, I am done here. May I ask for your name? I'm Bing Xian from the Glacial Dragon clan.
Yuan pondered for a moment whether he should use his real identity or a fake one. In the end, he spoke with a calm smile.
My name is Yuan, and I'd like to thank the Glacial Dragon clan for sharing this training ground.
Bing Xian didn't know what else to say and could only watch as Yuan entered the teleportation device and disappeared from the 5th floor. Sometime later, Yuan left the ice palace. Noticing his presence, the middle-aged man could only shake his head and mumble.
You're a monster. Thank you. By the way, how do I leave this place? There is only one teleportation device. It'll take you back to the place you came from. All right?
Sometime later, Yuan returned to the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. The Holy Dragon Emperor was waiting for him in front of the pagoda when he returned and said,
How was your training? I have achieved one of my goals, but I am still far from reaching my final goal. Anyway, when will we head out to meet the Azure Dragon clan? We can immediately leave. Let's do it. Very well.
The Dragon Emperor suddenly took a deep breath before speaking in a loud voice that rippled throughout the Dragon's Spiral Mountain.
We're leaving immediately.
A few moments later, a massive flying treasure in the shape of a boat appeared in the sky. The Holy Dragon clan had been preparing for their departure the moment they received the Azure Dragon clan's response and was only waiting for Yuan's return. Without any delay, Yuan and the Dragon Emperor flew onto the flying treasure, where Shimeli and other Holy Dragon clan members were waiting. Moreover, there was a small group of elite warriors, looking like they were prepared to go to war.
Welcome back, Yuan.
Shimeli approached him with a smile on her face. Yuan smiled back and said,
Looks like you've been working hard these past few months.
Shimeli's cultivation had not only soared to the peak of Divine Grandmaster, but her aura was also much sharper than before.
The Holy Dragon clan was generous enough to provide me with a personal instructor, and I have been training pretty much every day since then.
She revealed,
I heard you've been training inside the Frozen Palace. I plan on training at the Unyielding Playground once we return. Senior, are we allowed to leave now?
Asked the owner of the flying treasure. Yuan nodded.
Yes, we can leave now.
Soon, the flying treasure began moving, flying with immense speed.
We're headed to the Dragon Assembly Hall. It's a building built on an unnamed island specifically for meetings between the Holy Dragon clan and the Azure Dragon clan.
The Dragon Emperor explained as they traveled. 1952 meeting the Azure Dragon clan.
Are they soldiers?
Yuan asked, his gaze settling on the group of elite warriors stationed around the ship, standing like silent sentinels.
Yes.
The Dragon Emperor replied.
We're not expecting a battle with the Azure Dragon clan, but it's a precaution. They'll be doing the same on their end. I see.
Their journey to the Dragon Assembly Hall took just over a week, so they still had a few days to spare before their scheduled meeting with the Azure Dragon clan. The Dragon Assembly Hall itself was an imposing dome-shaped structure, constructed at the heart of a barren, isolated island. Normally, sea beasts roamed these waters in abundance, but Yuan couldn't sense a single presence near the island. It was as if something on the island itself was repelling them.
Can I explore the place before the Azure Dragon clan's arrival?
Shimeli asked. However, the Dragon Emperor shook his head and said,
Since this is a formal meeting, we can only enter the island on the scheduled date, even if we've arrived early. Oh, okay.
The Azure Dragon clan didn't make an appearance until a day before the scheduled meeting. Unlike the Holy Dragon clan, who traveled by air, the Azure Dragon clan moved through the sea depths, emerging gracefully from the sea, as if the ocean itself parted to welcome them.
So that's the Azure Dragon clan, huh?
Shimeli murmured, her eyes scanning their features with quiet curiosity. Unlike the Holy Dragon clan, who bore black hair and golden eyes, the Azure Dragon clan stood out with their light blue hair, shimmering like the sea under sunlight, paired with the same striking golden eyes that marked their royal heritage. However, just like the Holy Dragon clan, they did not set foot on the island and merely camped out right outside it. Just as the Dragon Emperor predicted, the Azure Dragon clan also brought their own warriors. In fact, they brought thrice as many soldiers as the Holy Dragon clan. The next day, both the Azure Dragon clan and the Holy Dragon clan entered the island and made their way to the building. Neither attempted to speak with the other until they were inside the building. Once they were seated, the leader of the Azure Dragon clan, Jiao Zhenhai, spoke.
What's the meaning of this Holy Dragon Emperor? Why did you bring a human to such an important meeting? Watch your mouth, Jiao Zhenhai. He's not your typical human.
Yuan then spoke.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yuan, and I was the one who arranged our meeting today. What? You're? Yes. I am Dragon Goddess Yao's envoy. Ha ha ha.
Jiao Zhenhai suddenly burst out laughing.
Do you really expect me to believe that you, a human, are the dragon?
Before Jiao Zhenhai could even finish his sentence, Yuan activated his dragon transformation, unleashing a surge of aura that flooded the entire room with overwhelming pressure. The soldiers of the Azure Dragon clan reacted instantly. Sensing the sudden release of power, they instinctively shifted into combat stances, their bodies tensing as if bracing for a battle. Seeing this, the soldiers of the Holy Dragon clan also braced themselves. However, the tense atmosphere quickly calmed down when Yuan remained still.
So you can use dragon transformation. I fail to see how that proves you are Dragon Goddess Yao's envoy.
Zhao Zhenhai sneered in disbelief.
It proves you know nothing about Dragon Goddess Yao.
Someone from the Holy Dragon clan sneered.
What?
Zhao Zhenhai frowned at such provocative words. The Dragon Emperor smiled and elaborated.
Dragon Goddess Yao has the ability to grant abilities unique to dragons to other beast races, including humans. The fact that he can use dragon transformation is proof that he was blessed by Dragon Goddess Yao.
Zhao Zhenhai narrowed his eyes and asked. Yuan smiled and said,
Recently. What?
Many from the Azure Dragon clan showed surprise, even shock, upon hearing this.
Are you implying that Dragon Goddess Yao has returned?
Zhao Zhenhai asked. Although he tried to hide it, his voice was still trembling slightly.
That's exactly what I am trying to say. Bullshit. I have witnessed evidence of her return with my own eyes,
said the Dragon Emperor.
Me too.
Those who were there to witness Dragon Goddess Yao's appearance in the Dragon's Spiral Mountain joined in. Zhao Zhenhai remained silent for a good moment before he finally responded.
Since the Holy Dragon clan vouches for him, I'll take your word for it. So, Dragon Goddess Yao's envoy, why did you organize this meeting? I'll get straight to the point. The key you took from the Holy Dragon clan. I need it. You mean the key that our Azure Dragon clan won during a bet? I don't mind lending it to you, but it won't be free, even if you're Dragon Goddess Yao's envoy. Of course, I don't intend to take it for free.
Yuan said calmly.
What do you want in exchange? I want the Dragon's Spiral Mountain.
The room fell into a suffocating silence. The members of the Azure Dragon clan struggled to maintain their composure, faint smirks tugging at the corners of their lips and amusement flickering in their eyes. Meanwhile, the expressions of the Holy Dragon clan darkened, their brows furrowed deeply in barely restrained indignation.
Unfortunately, I do not own the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, so I cannot give it to you. However, I can give you something else. And what can you possibly give me that's worth more than the Dragon's Spiral Mountain?
Zhao Zhenhai sneered in disdain.
The reason you want the Dragon's Spiral Mountain is because you want the Great One's attention, right? Do you need something from him? Even if I do need something from the Great One, it's not something you can provide.
Yuan smiled and said,
You're right. I may not be able to provide it, but Dragon Goddess Yao might. What?
Zhao Zhenhai's expression stiffened. 1953 Azure Dragon clan's predicament. Yuan continued, his voice steady and firm.
You may not know much about Dragon Goddess Yao, but surely you should be aware that among the 3 dragons of origin, she stands as the strongest. Whatever the Great One can offer, there's little, if anything, that Dragon Goddess Yao cannot match or surpass.
Zhao Zhenhai fell silent to ponder Yuan's words, and the rest of the Azure Dragon clan began exchanging glances with each other. Eventually, Zhao Zhenhai spoke.
I am willing to negotiate, but I will only continue speaking if you, Dragon Goddess Yao's envoy, are alone. That means the rest of the Holy Dragon clan must leave. That's unreasonable. There's no way we could leave Senior Envoy alone with you bastards.
The Dragon Emperor then spoke, his tone calm, yet resolute.
I must agree with the others. He holds as much importance to us as Dragon Goddess Yao herself. We cannot, in good conscience, allow him to be left in the hands of your Azure Dragon clan, especially after the aggression you've already shown. This matter pertains to information meant solely for the Azure Dragon clan.
Zhao Zhenhai said firmly.
It is not something to be shared with outsiders, especially the Holy Dragon clan.
Holy Dragon Emperor pondered for a brief moment before responding.
In that case, I alone will stay here with him. I may be with the Holy Dragon clan, but I have my own reputation to uphold as a Dragon Emperor. I can even make an oath if you're not satisfied.
Zhao Zhenhai nodded and said,
If it's just you, and you're willing to swear an oath you will keep it to yourself, I am willing to let you stay.
The Dragon Emperor turned to glance at the members of the Holy Dragon clan behind him. Without a single word exchanged, they quietly took their leave, offering no complaints or objections. With the Dragon Emperor present, the strongest among them, they had no reason to doubt Yuan's safety. Once the Holy Dragon clan left, the Dragon Emperor solemnly swore an oath, binding himself to secrecy until death regarding anything discussed in the conversation that followed. Only after the oath was spoken did Jiao Zhenhai finally open his mouth to speak.
I'll get straight to the point.
Jiao Zhenhai said, his expression turning grave.
Our clan's bloodline is cursed. With each passing generation, its purity diminishes. If this continues, the Azure Dragon clan will eventually fall beneath the threshold required to be recognized as a royal bloodline. To stop this decline, we need the assistance of the Great One. However, to even get his attention, we need something he's interested in, and that's the Dragon Spiral Mountain. How can you be so sure it's a curse that's causing your bloodline to decline?
Dragon Emperor asked with a doubtful look on his face.
Because that's what the bastard who did it to us said.
Jiao Zhenhai shouted angrily as he slammed the desk.
That bastard.
Yuan raised an eyebrow.
I don't know who or what he truly is.
Jiao Zhenhai said, his voice low with lingering unease.
He simply appeared before our headquarters one day and demanded our family heirloom. When we refused and attempted to drive him off, he warned us that he would curse our bloodline. That was many thousands of years ago. Since then, our lineage has steadily declined. At first, the changes were subtle, barely noticeable. But now, it's growing worse with each generation. I see. So this curse is the source of your problem, and if I get rid of it, you'll lend me the key.
Yuan said.
If you can solve our predicament, let alone lend you the key, we'll give it to you.
Yuan smiled and said,
That's a promise. As for your curse, I have a simple solution that doesn't even require Dragon Goddess Yao's involvement. What?
In response to the Azure Dragon clan's puzzled expressions, Yuan retrieved the sacred chalice of purification and explained.
If you pour a few drops of your blood into this chalice, it'll get rid of your curse. Touch that? What kind of treasure is that?
Jiao Zhenhai asked, swallowing nervously as he felt the profound and unfamiliar aura radiating from the chalice. Even the Dragon Emperor's eyes narrowed with intrigue. The aura it emitted was unlike anything he had ever sensed, ancient, otherworldly, and utterly unique. No one present could recall encountering anything quite like it before.
It belongs to Dragon Goddess Yao.
Yuan explained briefly.
Are you worried it might do something to you?
Jiao Zhenhai hesitated, then shifted his gaze to the Dragon Emperor, seeking silent reassurance, as if needing his approval before proceeding.
If anything happens to you, I'll offer you my life.
The Dragon Emperor spoke without an ounce of hesitation in his voice. Jiao Zhenhai nodded and fed several drops of his blood to the chalice. Yuan and everyone in the room waited in tense silence, a mix of anticipation and unease hanging heavily in the air. However, nothing happened even after many moments, causing Yuan to raise an eyebrow.
What's wrong?
Jiao Zhenhai could no longer keep silent and questioned. Yuan inspected the chalice to ensure nothing was wrong with it before looking at Jiao Zhenhai and speaking with a serious face.
You're not cursed. What? How is that possible?
Jiao Zhenhai exclaimed in disbelief.
You must be messing with me. What would I gain from lying to you?
Yuan shook his head.
This is a profound treasure that can remove even the strongest curses out there. The fact that it's not responding to your blood is simply because you are not cursed. Then how do you explain what's been happening to my clan's bloodline?
Jiao Zhenhai roared, his voice trembling with frustration.
Are you telling me my entire family has been wrong all this time?
He refused to believe it was all just a misunderstanding. There had to be more behind the slow collapse of his lineage. Yuan shrugged and said,
I have no way of knowing that unless I take a closer look for myself. How about I come to your place and investigate it further?
1954, visiting the Azure Dragon clan's territory.
Did I hear you correctly? You want to visit the Azure Dragon clan's headquarters?
Zhao Zhenhai asked with a deep frown.
Yes.
Yuan replied with a nod.
And what exactly do you hope to accomplish?
Zhao Zhenhai pressed.
Our clan has lived there for tens of thousands of years. We've searched every corner, and nothing we've found has ever explained our situation or hinted at a solution. Who knows? I can't tell you until I see it for myself. Maybe you missed something. What do you have to lose? Anyway.
Zhao Zhenhai rubbed his eyes and sighed.
Dragon Emperor, will you be joining him? I won't allow anyone else from the Holy Dragon clan to join.
Holy Dragon Emperor nodded and said,
Naturally. Wherever he goes, I will follow. Since this involves the entire clan, I cannot make this decision myself. Let me return to my clan to speak with the others first. I will contact you within 2 months. Very well.
The meeting ended shortly after with the Azure Dragon clan and the Holy Dragon clan returning to their own homes.
So, what's happening?
The Holy Dragon clan asked the Dragon Emperor as they rode their flying treasure back to the Dragon's Spiral Mountain.
I cannot go into details since I made an oath, but Senior Envoy and I will be making a trip to the Azure Dragon clan soon. What? You're heading directly to their headquarters? That's too reckless even for you, Your Majesty. It's fine. Even if they try to do something, I will take down at least half of their clan before I perish.
Yuan shook his head and tried to reassure the others that it would be fine.
The Azure Dragon clan is in a unique situation. I doubt they'll do anything to us. I don't know what's happening, but what if they're tricking you, Senior Envoy? What if it's an ambush?
Yuan chuckled and said,
Do you really think we'll be going there alone? Have you forgotten who else is with me?
They quickly came to a realization.
That's right. You have Dragon Goddess Yayo.
Yuan nodded.
Indeed. With Dragon Goddess Yayo at our side, not even the Great One could do anything to us.
He said. Hearing this, the Holy Dragon clan was no longer worried about their safety. If anything, they hoped the Azure Dragon clan would try something so they could be erased from existence by Dragon Goddess Yayo. Once they returned to the Dragon Spiral Mountain, she immediately returned to her training. As for Yuan, he also returned to the Frozen Palace to progress his physique, even if it was just a little.
You're back? Why?
The middle-aged man was puzzled by his return and said,
Didn't you already achieve cold immunity? It won't go any further than that even if you train for 1,000 years. I know.
Without offering any explanation, Yuan entered the 5th floor.
HM? There's nobody here?
Yuan had expected to see the 4 immortals who were training there during his last visit. With only 2 weeks having passed, they should still have been in the midst of their training. Unbeknownst to him, however, the 4 had been so shaken by Yuan's reckless training that they chose to take a break from their own cultivation. Some time later, Yuan seated himself beside the Heaven Frost essence. Despite his cold immunity, the presence of the ice crystal radiated an intense chill that was still bitterly cold, even for him. When the Ice Knight appeared an hour later, Yuan purposefully allowed it to attack him, quickly stacking up glacial traces again. This time, Yuan pushed himself directly to 50 glacial traces. However, even after an entire hour, his physique showed no signs of improvement. Curious, he attempted to push further, stacking additional glacial traces onto his body. Yet as he reached 60, he realized there was a limit to their effectiveness. Beyond 50, the additional traces had no noticeable impact. It felt no different than before. An entire week later, Yuan finally noticed some improvements to his physique, but it was incredibly minimal. Progress, 2%. After an entire week of relentless training, Yuan's progress had increased by only a single percent. At this rate, it would take him nearly 2 full years to reach completion. But knowing the nature of his physique, he understood all too well. The closer he came to perfecting it, the slower and harder the progress would become. Realistically, no matter how much time he spent here, it was unlikely he would ever fully complete his physique in this place alone. Still, Yuan wanted to make the most of the opportunity. He devoted all his time to training on the 5th floor while awaiting a response from the Azure Dragon clan. A month and a half passed before the long-awaited message finally arrived. In that time, he had managed to increase his physique's progress by only another 3%.
The Dragon Emperor has a message for you.
Before the man could convey the Dragon Emperor's message, Yuan walked toward the teleportation device and said,
No need. I'll hear it from him personally.
Sometime later, Yuan met up with the Dragon Emperor.
The Azure Dragon clan has responded. They agreed to let us visit their territory, and they'll pick us up from this place in a month. Sounds good.
With a month remaining before his visit to the Azure Dragon clan's territory, Yuan spent his days sparring with the young dragons at the training grounds. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and a month later, Zhao Zhenhai and a small group of elite guards showed up at the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Yuan and the Dragon Emperor wasted no time and grouped up with them.
Before we depart, do you need any water-breathing pills?
Zhao Zhenhai asked, aware that humans couldn't breathe underwater.
I'll be fine as long as I cover myself with spiritual energy,
said Yuan. Zhao Zhenhai raised an eyebrow and said,
What if you run out of spiritual energy? Don't underestimate the Sea of Dragons. Can be quite rough even for an immortal, whatever. Even if you exhaust your spiritual energy, we have some water-breathing pills prepared for you, so you won't die from drowning. Thank you for your consideration.
Yuan smiled. 1955 Underwater City. After forming an airtight barrier of spiritual energy around himself, functioning like a self-contained air tank, Yuan stepped forward and followed Zhao Zhenhai into the depths of the Sea of Dragons. The waters of the Sea of Dragons were remarkably clear, allowing Yuan to see his surroundings with ease, even without the aid of any special techniques or artifacts. Once they had descended deep enough into the sea, one of the soldiers accompanying Zhao Zhenhai suddenly shifted into his true form, a massive, blue-scaled dragon whose presence seemed to ripple through the surrounding waters with raw majesty and power.
Hop on,
Zhao Zhenhai said to them as he stood on the dragon's back, treating it like a mount. Flying treasures that functioned underwater were rare and not as fast as they were in the sky, but for the Azure Dragon clan, such tools were unnecessary. Masters of the sea, they traversed the waters with ease, relying on their natural prowess rather than external aid.
We will arrive at our destination in a month,
said Zhao Zhenhai.
A month? Your base isn't as far as I expected,
Yuan remarked. Zhao Zhenhai laughed at Yuan's remark and said,
It only takes a month because we're taking a shortcut. If we travel normally, it'd take several years to reach our place. By shortcut, do you mean the underwater currents? A few of those and a natural teleporter.
Just as the primal expanse possessed natural teleporters, so too did the Nine Heavens, though most of them were hidden deep beneath the sea. As for the underwater currents, they functioned like one-way tunnels, allowing anything within them to travel at incredible speeds with minimal effort. A few days later, they reached their first underwater current. The moment the dragon entered it, a powerful force surged around them, and their speed increased severalfold, propelling them through the depths like an arrow loosed from a bow. However, these water currents are not without drawbacks. One of the drawbacks to these underwater currents was their sheer intensity. Some were so powerful that they could tear a body apart if one wasn't strong enough to withstand the force. It's been a while since I entered one of these, Yuan thought to himself as he reminisced about the previous times he'd traveled underwater as Tian-He, the immortal monarch. The Azure Dragon clan wasn't the only one to call the ocean depths their home. Countless species and races had carved out their own domains beneath the waves. While the underwater world wasn't nearly as densely populated as the lands above, it was far from empty, filled with a wide variety of beings who had adapted to life in the vast, mysterious deep. When he was still living as the immortal monarch, he'd even visited cities that were entirely built underwater. After spending several days riding the current, they finally reached its end. However, it wasn't long before they came across another one, just a few hours later, and without hesitation, they entered and let it carry them onward through the depths once more. As for Yuan's barrier, it was under constant assault from the powerful currents. If not for his physique that constantly replenished his spiritual energy and experience, maintaining it would have been impossible for someone at his cultivation level. Half a month later, they arrived at their first natural teleporter, which existed in a suspicious-looking fissure at the seafloor. Throughout their journey, Yuan encountered many unique sea beasts, some bearing a striking resemblance to dragons, although lacking the distinct, commanding aura that true dragons possessed. Yet despite their size or appearance, these creatures would always steer clear once they sensed the group's presence, instinctively avoiding the path of the Azure Dragon clan. Hell, Yuan even came across a few flying leviathans, but like the rest of the sea beasts, they veered away the moment they sensed the group's presence. After passing through the deep fissure, Yuan's group emerged into an entirely different region of the sea. The terrain had shifted so drastically that without thousands of years of experience living in these waters, it would be nearly impossible to navigate or know where to go next. After passing through several more currents and one final natural teleporter, Yuan and his group finally arrived at the Azure Dragon clan's territory. Nestled deep within the tranquil blue of the sea, the territory resembled a small, self-contained city, its structures crafted from a combination of gleaming coral, crystal, and flowing stone that shimmered with life and energy. Towering spires curved like sea serpents, and wide pavilions were anchored to the seabed by living roots that pulsed faintly with energy. Glowing flora swayed with the tides, illuminating the surroundings with a gentle bioluminescence. At the same time, aquatic beasts native to the region glided peacefully between structures, coexisting in harmony with the Azure Dragons. Despite being underwater, the city exuded a quiet, regal grandeur, an ancient calm that reflected the pride and heritage of the Azure Dragon clan. Unlike the Holy Dragon clan, which remained largely self-contained within the Dragon Spiral Mountain, the Azure Dragon clan operated more like a traditional royal house, complete with its own city, infrastructure, and citizens. They didn't just command a bloodline, they ruled a domain. As for the inhabitants of the Azure Dragon clan's territory, they weren't limited to dragons alone. A diverse array of sea races could be seen moving through the city, most of them bearing the human form. Just like most land-dwelling beasts, sea beasts had adopted human forms for convenience, making interaction, movement, and daily life far easier within a structured society. As Yuan's group passed over the city from above, the scene below shifted. Everyone, regardless of race or status, paused what they were doing and looked up. With reverent expressions, they offered respectful bows or gestures, honoring the presence of the Azure Dragon clan.
Is this your first time seeing an underwater city?
Zhao Zhenhai suddenly asked Yuan. He shook his head and responded with a slight smile.
No, but it's definitely been a while